The cold had teeth, and Lily Nichols felt every single one of them gnawing through her thin dress as she pressed her ear against the attic floorboards, listening to her stepmother's laughter echoing from the parlor below. 3 months she had been locked in this frozen prison, watching through the single dusty window as snow buried Los Alamos, New Mexico, deeper with each passing December day. And now it was February 1884, and she wondered if anyone even remembered she existed. Her father had died in September, thrown from a spooked horse during a cattle drive, and within weeks, Lucinda Marsh, the woman he had married only a year prior, had revealed her true nature. The day after the funeral, when Lily refused to sign over her inheritance from her late mother, Lucinda had struck her across the face and dragged her up the narrow attic stairs. The heavy oak door had slammed shut, the lock had turned, and Lily had been trapped ever since. The attic was barely large enough to stand in at its center, with sloped ceilings that forced her to crouch near the walls. A single threadbare blanket lay on the rough wooden floor, and a chipped ceramic basin in the corner served purposes she preferred not to dwell on. Once a day, usually after dark, Lucinda would unlock the door, just wide enough to shove through a plate of scraps and a cup of water, never saying a word, never meeting Lily's eyes. Lily had turned 19 in January, alone in the darkness, marking the day by scratching another line into the wooden beam beside her makeshift bed. She counted them sometimes when sleep would not come, running her fingers over the grooves, each one a small rebellion against the erasure of her existence. The window became her only connection to the world beyond. Through it, she watched the town moving below, watched horses pulling sleighs through the snow-packed streets, watched smoke rising from chimneys, watched life continuing without her. She had tried screaming for help during the first week, pounding on the glass until her hands bled, but the attic faced the back alley, and the wind carried her voice away into the vast New Mexico wilderness. Los Alamos sat nestled in the Chemez Mountains, a town that had grown around the logging industry and the ranches that dotted the high desert valleys. Winter here was brutal and unforgiving, nothing like the romantic Christmas snows people back east imagined. The cold was dry and piercing, and the storms could bury a house in hours. Lily had watched 3 such storms from her window, each one adding to her despair, each one making rescue seem more impossible. She rationed her energy carefully now, moving only when necessary to keep her blood flowing. The cold had become a constant companion, an enemy she fought every moment. She wrapped herself in the blanket, tucked her hands under her arms, and thought about warmth. She thought about her mother's kitchen, about summer days riding across the ranch with her father, about everything she had lost. On the morning of February 14th, something changed. Lily heard voices below, unfamiliar ones mixing with Lucinda's sugary tones. A man's voice, deep and measured, asking questions about property lines and water rights. Lily crawled to the spot directly above the parlor and pressed her ear to the floorboards. "I'm telling you, Mr. Irving, my late husband's ranch borders the creek for a full 2 miles, Lucinda was saying, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "The deed is quite clear. Mrs. Nichols, I have surveyed this area extensively, and the markers indicate otherwise." The man's voice held a note of steel beneath its politeness. "The Nichols property ends at the Cottonwood Grove, which means you have been diverting water that rightfully belongs to the Simpson place." "How dare you question my integrity? I am a grieving widow trying to maintain her husband's legacy." Lily's heart raced. Her father had been scrupulous about property lines, had shown her the boundaries himself when she was 16. The creek ran along their land for exactly 1 mile before curving onto the Simpson ranch. Lucinda was lying, probably had been for months, and this surveyor had caught her. She made a decision born of desperation. Crawling to the window, she used her fist to pound against the glass, 3 sharp strikes that made the old pane rattle in its frame, then 3 more, and 3 more. Below, the conversation had stopped. "What was that noise?" the man asked. "Squirrels in the attic," Lucinda said quickly. "They are terrible this time of year. Now, about the water rights, I really must insist." Lily pounded again, harder this time, a steady rhythm that could not be mistaken for animals. She heard footsteps below, someone moving toward the stairs. She pounded faster, putting all her remaining strength into it, and then she heard Lucinda's voice rise in pitch. Mr. Irving, there is really no need to concern yourself with house pests. Let us return to the matter at hand. But the footsteps were ascending, heavy boots on wooden stairs. Lily heard Lucinda following, her voice growing shrill. Mr. Irving, I must protest. You have no right to explore my private home. The footsteps reached the second floor, paused, then continued upward toward the attic access. Lily pressed herself against the door, pounding now with both fists. Help! Please help me! I'm locked in here! The footsteps stopped directly outside. Someone is in there, the man said, his voice hard. My stepdaughter, Lucinda said, and Lily could hear the calculation in her tone. She is not well, Mr. Irving. She suffers from fits and delusions, for her own safety. Open the door. I will not. This is my home, and she is my responsibility. Madam, if there's someone locked in there against their will, that is a matter for the sheriff. Lily heard scuffling, Lucinda's protests growing more desperate. You have no authority. Get out of my house. Miss, step back from the door, the man called through the wood. Lily scrambled backward, pulling the blanket around herself. There was a moment of silence, and then the door shuddered as something heavy struck it. Once, twice. On the third impact, the wood around the lock splintered and the door burst inward, gray winter light flooding the attic. The man who stood in the doorway was tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair touched with gray at the temples and eyes the color of storm clouds. He wore a heavy coat dusted with snow, and his hand still gripped the iron surveying stake he had used as a battering ram. He stared at Lily for a long moment, his expression shifting from determination to shock to barely contained fury. Jesus Christ, he breathed. Lily tried to stand, but her legs, weakened by months of poor food and cold, buckled beneath her. The man moved fast, crossing the attic in 2 strides and catching her before she hit the floor. He wrapped his coat around her, and the warmth of it, the solid strength of his arms, was so overwhelming that Lily felt tears begin to stream down her face. How long? He asked, his voice rough. 3 months, she whispered. Since November. His arms tightened around her, and she felt him turn toward the door where Lucinda stood, her face pale with rage and fear. You locked a girl in an attic through winter? His voice was quiet, which somehow made it more terrible. You starved her and froze her for 3 months? She is unstable. She refused to accept her father's death. I was protecting her from herself. You are a liar and worse. He adjusted his hold on Lily, lifting her as easily as if she weighed nothing. I am taking her to Dr. Harrison, and then I'm getting the sheriff. If you are smart, you will start running now. Lucinda's face twisted with hatred. That inheritance is mine. She has no right to it. Her mother was nothing but a Mexican whore who trapped my husband. The man's expression did not change, but Lily felt his muscles tense. Say another word, and I will forget I am a gentleman. He carried Lily down the attic stairs, through the hallway, down the main staircase. Lucinda followed, shrieking threats and accusations, but he did not pause or acknowledge her. The parlor was warm, blessedly warm, and Lily saw the surveying equipment spread across her father's desk, maps and tools and official documents. The front door stood open, letting in the cold February air, and beyond it, Lily could see the street, see people, see freedom. The man carried her through the doorway and down the porch steps, and the shock of leaving the house after so long made her dizzy. Stay with me, he said, his voice close to her ear. You are safe now. I promise you are safe. A horse stood tied to the hitching post, a sturdy bay gelding with intelligent eyes. The man set Lily gently on her feet, keeping one arm around her waist to steady her, and untied the reins with his free hand. Then he lifted her again and settled her sideways in the saddle before swinging up behind her. His arms came around her, holding the reins, and his coat enclosed them both. Walk on, Chester, he murmured to the horse, and they moved down the street at a gentle pace. Lily leaned back against his chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, the warmth of his body seeping into her frozen limbs. People stared as they passed, and she heard voices, questions, exclamations of shock. The man ignored them all, guiding the horse with practiced ease through the snowy streets toward the center of town. What is your name? He asked quietly. Lily Nichols. I am Xavier Irving. I am sorry I did not find you sooner. You found me. Her voice was barely a whisper. That is what matters. Doc Harrison's office was a small building attached to his home, marked by a painted sign and a railed porch. Xavier dismounted and lifted Lily down, carrying her up the steps and through the door without knocking. A bell jangled overhead. "Doc!" Xavier called. "I need you now." A white-haired man emerged from the back room, wiping his hands on a cloth. He took one look at Lily and his expression hardened. "Examining room. Now." Xavier carried her through and laid her on a padded table covered with clean white sheets. The doctor was already moving, gathering supplies, lighting a lamp. What happened to her? Locked in an attic since November. Her stepmother. Xavier stepped back but did not leave the room. "I need to get the sheriff, but I do not want to leave her alone. My wife is here. Martha." Doc Harrison was examining Lily's hands, his touch gentle but professional. "Malnutrition, frostbite on the fingers, dehydration. Girl, can you hear me?" "Yes, sir." "Any pain?" "Be specific." Lily tried to catalog the aches that had become so normal, she barely noticed them. "My fingers and toes hurt. My chest hurts when I breathe deep. I'm so cold." Martha Harrison appeared, a plump woman with kind eyes and graying hair. She took one look at Lily and immediately moved to the stove in the corner, stoking it higher. "That monster," she said quietly. "Everyone wondered what happened to James Nichols' daughter." "They wondered, but no one checked?" Xavier's voice was tight with anger. "Lucinda said she had gone to stay with relatives back east," Martha said, filling a kettle. "We had no reason to doubt her." Doc Harrison was removing Lily's shoes, his face grim as he examined her feet. "Mild frostbite could be worse. Martha, warm water, not hot. We need to bring her temperature up slowly. And broth, the chicken broth from yesterday." Xavier stood with his arms crossed, watching. "I'm getting the sheriff. Mrs. Harrison, please do not let anyone near her until I return." "No one will touch this child," Martha said firmly. "You have my word." Xavier nodded and turned to go, but Lily's voice stopped him. "Thank you." He looked back at her, and something passed between them in that moment, something Lily could not name but felt down to her bones. "I will be back soon," he promised. After he left, Martha and Doc Harrison worked with quiet efficiency. They warmed Lily slowly, wrapped her in heated blankets, gave her small sips of broth that tasted like heaven. Martha helped her out of her filthy dress and into a clean nightgown, gasping at the sight of Lily's too thin frame, her bruised skin, the marks on her wrists from pounding on the door. "That woman should hang," Martha said softly, brushing Lily's matted hair with gentle strokes. "How you survived this, I do not know." "I thought about my father," Lily said. "I thought about how he would want me to fight, to survive." Doc Harrison returned with a tray of medicines. "Your father was a good man, Lily. I am sorry for your loss, and sorrier still for what came after." He examined her eyes, her throat, listened to her heart and lungs. "You are malnourished and weak, but you will recover. Your youth saved you, another month up there," and he did not finish the sentence. They had just gotten Lily settled on a cot in the warm examining room, propped up with pillows and wrapped in quilts, when heavy footsteps announced Xavier's return. He was not alone. Sheriff Tom Garrett, a weathered man in his 50s with a silver star pinned to his vest, followed him inside, his expression grim. "Miss Nichols," the sheriff said, removing his hat, "I need to hear what happened in your own words." Lily told him everything. The wedding a year ago, her father's death, the inheritance from her mother, Lucinda's demands that she sign it over, the refusal, the beating, the locked attic. The sheriff took notes, his jaw tightening with each detail. "The inheritance," he said. "From your mother? Your father's will left everything to his wife, as is customary." "My mother was Maria Elena Nichols, born Navarro," Lily said. "She owned land south of here, near Santa Fe, passed down through her family. When she died 10 years ago, it came to me, held in trust until I turned 19. I turned 19 last month." "So this land is legally yours?" "Yes, sir. The papers are with the lawyer in Santa Fe, Mr. Benjamin Carter. He was supposed to contact me this month about finalizing the transfer." The sheriff nodded slowly. "And Mrs. Lucinda Nichols wanted you to sign this land over to her? She said it should be part of my father's estate. She said I had no right to keep it from her. When I refused, she locked me in the attic." Sheriff Garrett closed his notebook. "Doc, is this girl well enough to travel to the courthouse to make a formal statement?" "Tomorrow. Perhaps today she needs rest and food. That is fine. I am arresting Mrs. Nichols on charges of false imprisonment and attempted fraud, possibly attempted murder, given the circumstances. He looked at Xavier. You planning to press charges for the water rights dispute? Damn right I am. She has been stealing from the Simpson Ranch for months, running cattle on land she does not own, diverting creek water illegally. You work for the Simpsons? I'm a land surveyor. They hired me when their water started running low. Mrs. Nichols has been very creative with her property claims. Xavier's expression was cold. If I had not been checking those boundaries today, if I had not heard Lily calling for help. But you did, Sheriff Garrett said. You saved her life, Mr. Irving. The town owes you for that. He settled his hat back on his head. I will go arrest Mrs. Nichols now. Miss Nichols, you rest and get strong. We will need your testimony. But there is no rush. After the sheriff left, Doc Harrison stepped outside to speak with a patient who had arrived, leaving Martha to tend to Lily. Xavier lingered near the door, seemingly uncertain whether to stay or go. You do not have to stay, Lily said softly. You have done so much already. I want to stay, he said, unless you would prefer I leave. No. The word came quickly, surprising her with its intensity. Please stay. He pulled a chair close to her cot and sat down. In the lamplight, she could see him more clearly now. He was older than her, perhaps 30, with a strong, weathered face and calloused hands that spoke of hard work. There was a scar along his jaw, faded with time, and lines at the corners of his eyes that suggested he smiled more often than he frowned, though he was not smiling now. How long have you been in Los Alamos? She asked, wanting to hear his voice, wanting the comfort of conversation with someone who was not her captor. About 2 months. I travel for work, surveying land disputes across the territory. This was supposed to be a quick job, but the situation turned out to be more complex than expected. He paused. I almost left yesterday. I almost finished the survey and moved on to my next job in Taos. The thought of how close she had come to missing him, to remaining trapped while he rode away unknowing, made Lily's breath catch. I am glad you stayed. So am I. His gray eyes met hers, and she saw something in them that made her heart beat faster. When I heard you calling through that door, when I realized someone was locked in there, I have never been so angry in my life. And when I saw you... He stopped, his jaw working. I am sorry. You do not need to hear this. What were you going to say? I was going to say that I wanted to tear that house apart with my bare hands, that I wanted to make your stepmother pay for every moment you suffered. He looked down at his hands. I'm not usually given to violence, but today, I wanted blood. So did I, Lily admitted. Every day, every hour, I imagined what I would do to her if I ever got free. I imagined terrible things. That does not make you a bad person. That makes you human. Martha returned with more broth and a thick slice of bread soaked in butter. Small amounts, she instructed. Your stomach needs to remember how to handle food. Eat slowly. Lily obeyed, savoring each bite. Xavier watched in silence, his expression unreadable. When she finished, exhaustion crashed over her like a wave. Sleep, Martha said, adjusting the blankets. We will be right here. But as Lily's eyes drifted closed, she reached out instinctively, her hand finding Xavier's. His fingers closed around hers, warm and strong, and she heard his quiet voice. I am here. Sleep now. She slept deeply for the first time in months, and when nightmares tried to surface, the steady pressure of Xavier's hand anchored her to safety. When she woke, it was dark outside, and the office was lit by lamplight. Xavier was still there, sitting in the same chair, though he had dozed off with his chin on his chest. Their hands were still linked. Doc Harrison sat at his desk nearby, writing in a ledger. How long did I sleep? Lily asked softly. The doctor looked up. 6 hours. How do you feel? Better. Warmer. She looked at Xavier. He stayed? Refused to leave. I offered him supper and he ate it right there in that chair, never let go of your hand. Doc Harrison smiled slightly. You made an impression on him, I think. He saved my life. He did. And I suspect he's not done being your champion yet. As if hearing his name, Xavier stirred and opened his eyes. He looked immediately at Lily, checking on her, and a smile softened his features when he saw her awake. You have color in your cheeks again. Thanks to you, and Doc Harrison and Mrs. Harrison, "The sheriff came by an hour ago," Doc Harrison said. "Mrs. Nichols is in jail. She tried to flee town, but only made it as far as the livery before he caught her. Apparently, she was attempting to steal a horse." "Will she be tried here?" Lily asked. "Eventually, yes. But these things take time. In the meantime, the question is where you will stay. The house is yours, legally, as your father's daughter, but I do not imagine you want to return there." The thought of entering that house again made Lily's stomach turn. "No, never." "My wife suggested you stay with us for a while," Doc Harrison offered. "We have a spare room and Martha would enjoy the company." "I could not impose. It is not an imposition. Consider it settled." He closed his ledger. "Now, I need to check your vitals again, and then Martha will bring supper." Over the next few days, Lily slowly regained her strength. Martha Harrison fed her nourishing meals, helped her bathe and wash her hair, provided clean clothes that had belonged to their daughter before she married and moved to Colorado. Lily spent hours in the warm parlor, wrapped in quilts, staring out the window at the town that continued its daily rhythms, still marveling at her freedom. Xavier visited every day. He brought books from the town's small library, thinking she might enjoy reading after months of nothing but her own thoughts. He brought news of the legal proceedings against Lucinda, of the water rights case, of town gossip and happenings. But mostly, he just sat with her talking about everything and nothing, his presence a comfort she had not known she craved. She learned that he was from Texas originally, had learned surveying from his father, had been wandering the West for 5 years, taking jobs wherever they took him. He had never married, though he admitted there had been someone once, a girl back in Texas who decided she preferred a banker to a man who spent his life traveling. "Do you ever regret it?" Lily asked one afternoon as they sat by the parlor window, watching snow fall softly outside. "The traveling, I mean. Do you ever want to settle somewhere?" Xavier was quiet for a moment, staring out at the white landscape. "I used to think I was content moving from place to place, no ties, no responsibilities beyond the job at hand. But lately—" He glanced at her, and something in his expression made her breath catch. "Lately I've been thinking that maybe there are things worth staying for." Before Lily could respond, Martha called from the kitchen that supper was ready, and the moment passed. But that night, lying in the comfortable bed in the Harrisons' spare room, Lily found herself thinking about Xavier's words, about the way he looked at her, about the warmth that spread through her chest whenever he smiled. She was falling in love with him. The realization should have frightened her, this sudden fierce feeling for a man she had known barely a week. But instead, it felt right, inevitable, as if she had been waiting for him her entire life, and just had not known it. A week after her rescue, Lily felt strong enough to visit the lawyer in Santa Fe to finalize the inheritance from her mother. Xavier offered to accompany her, and Doc Harrison agreed she was well enough to travel, provided they took the journey slowly and stopped to rest frequently. They left Los Alamos on a clear February morning, riding double on Chester, because Lily was not yet strong enough to manage her own horse. The journey to Santa Fe normally took 2 days, and Xavier had arranged for them to stay overnight at a reputable boarding house run by a friend of his. Riding with Xavier, his arms around her, his chest warm against her back, felt like the most natural thing in the world. They talked as Chester carried them south through the snow-dusted landscape, and Lily found herself telling him things she had never told anyone. About her mother, who had died when Lily was 9, about growing up on the ranch, about her father's loneliness after Maria's death, and his terrible choice in a second wife. "He was a good man who made a bad decision," Xavier said. "That does not diminish what he was." "I know. I just wish I had warned him somehow. I knew Lucinda was not what she seemed, but I was 16 and he seemed happy for the first time in years. I did not want to ruin that for him." "You were a child. It was not your responsibility to protect him from his own choices." They stopped for lunch beside a frozen stream, and Xavier built a small fire to warm them and brew coffee. He moved with efficient grace, and Lily watched him, memorizing the way he moved, the way the winter light caught in his dark hair. I can feel you staring," he said without looking up from the fire. "Is that a problem?" He did look up then, and his gray eyes were intense. "No, it is not a problem." They reached the boarding house as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Mrs. Chen, the proprietor, was a tiny Chinese woman who greeted Xavier with obvious affection and Lily with warm curiosity. She provided them with 2 rooms next to each other, served them a delicious meal of beef stew and fresh bread, and tactfully retired early, leaving them alone in the parlor. "She likes you," Lily observed, watching Xavier relax in a way she had not seen before. "I stayed here for 3 months 2 years ago, working on a survey near Santa Fe. Mrs. Chen is a good friend." He stretched his long legs toward the fire. "She lost her husband to a mining accident 5 years back. She turned their home into a boarding house to support herself. I admire her strength." "You admire strong women." "I do." His gaze found hers across the flickering firelight. "Very much." Lily's heart was beating too fast. "Xavier, I need to tell you something." "All right." "I do not want you to think I am confusing gratitude with something else. I know you saved me, and I will always be grateful for that. But what I feel when I am with you, it is not just gratitude." She took a breath, forcing herself to meet his eyes. "I care about you, more than I probably should, given that we have known each other less than 2 weeks." Xavier leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Lily, I need you to understand something. From the moment I carried you out of that attic, I have not been able to stop thinking about you, about your courage, your strength, the way you survived something that would have broken most people. I know it is too soon. I know you need time to heal, but I am not confused about what I feel, and it is not pity or protectiveness or some misguided sense of responsibility." "What is it then?" He stood and crossed to her chair, kneeling beside it so they were eye to eye. "It is love, Lily. I am falling in love with you, and I think I have been since the moment you looked up at me in that attic with tears on your face and thanked me even though you barely had the strength to speak." Lily reached out, her hand trembling slightly, and touched his face. He closed his eyes, leaning into her palm. "I love you too," she whispered. "It is terrifying and wonderful, and I love you." Xavier turned his head and kissed her palm, then her wrist, his lips warm against her skin. Then he cupped her face in his hands and kissed her properly, gently, as if she were something precious and fragile. Lily kissed him back, pouring everything she felt into it, all the fear and pain and hope and love, and when they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against hers. "I am not going to Taos," he said. "I am staying in Los Alamos. I am staying with you if you will have me." "Yes," she said simply. "Yes." They sat together by the fire until late into the night, talking and kissing and making plans for a future that suddenly seemed bright and possible. When they finally retired to their separate rooms, Lily lay in bed and smiled up at the ceiling, marveling at how quickly life could change, how darkness could become light in the space of a heartbeat. The next morning, they rode into Santa Fe and found the office of Benjamin Carter, attorney at law. He was an elderly gentleman with sharp eyes and a kind manner, and he remembered Lily from when she was a child. "Your mother was a remarkable woman," he said, pulling out a thick folder of documents. "She made very sure that her property would pass to you and you alone. The land is substantial, Miss Nichols. Nearly 500 acres of good grazing land with water rights to the Rio Grande. It is worth a considerable sum." Lily signed the papers, and just like that, she was a woman of independent means. Mr. Carter also had news about her father's estate. "Your stepmother has no legal claim to anything beyond a widow's third, which is customary. However, given that she is facing criminal charges and given the evidence of fraud and abuse, a judge may very well deny her even that. Your father's ranch, his cattle, his property in Los Alamos, it should all come to you as his only child." "I do not want the Los Alamos house," Lily said immediately. "I never want to set foot in it again." "Understandable. You could sell it." "What about the ranch itself, the land?" "That's quite valuable. Your father had 2,000 acres and a good water source. You would do well to hold on to it, hire a foreman to manage it." Lily looked at Xavier, who had been sitting quietly throughout the meeting. "What do you think?" "I think it is your decision," he said, "but good land is always worth keeping." "Could the 2 properties be managed together, my mother's land and my father's ranch?" Mr. Carter consulted his maps. "They are not adjacent, but they are not far apart either, 30 miles or so. With the right person overseeing both, it could certainly be done." Xavier was looking at her with understanding dawning in his eyes. "Lily, you do not have to make these decisions right now. I am not. I am just thinking about possibilities. She turned back to Mr. Carter. What would I need to do to combine them into one operation? Over the next hour, they discussed details and legalities. Mr. Carter promised to draw up papers and consult with colleagues about the best way to structure things. When they finally left his office, stepping out into the bright Santa Fe sunlight, Lily felt lighter than she had in years. "You are planning to become a rancher," Xavier said, taking her hand as they walked. "I am planning to reclaim what is mine, what my parents built, and I am planning to build something new." She stopped and turned to face him. "I want you to help me, not as a hired hand, Xavier, as a partner in everything." His expression went soft and serious. "Lily, are you proposing a business arrangement or something more?" "Something more, everything more." She took a breath. "I know it is too soon. I know I should wait, should be sensible, but I am done waiting. I am done with being sensible. I love you and I want to build a life with you, if you want that too." Xavier pulled her close, right there in the middle of the street, and kissed her soundly. When he released her, he was grinning. "I want that. I want everything with you." They were married 3 weeks later in a small ceremony at the church in Los Alamos, with Doc and Martha Harrison standing witness. Lily wore a dress of pale blue silk that Martha had helped her make, and Xavier wore a new suit that made him look handsome and slightly uncomfortable. Sheriff Garrett attended, having become something of a friend during the legal proceedings against Lucinda, and even Mrs. Chen made the journey from Santa Fe, bringing a magnificent cake as a gift. Lucinda Nichols was still in jail, awaiting trial. The evidence against her was overwhelming, between Lily's testimony, Xavier's account of the rescue, Doc Harrison's medical findings, and the fraud charges related to the land disputes. She would likely spend years in prison, and Lily found that she could think about it now without hatred, only a kind of tired relief that justice would be served. The newlyweds spent their wedding night in the Harrison house, in the same room where Lily had recovered, and Xavier was gentle and patient and loving, making sure she felt safe and cherished. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the darkness, talking about their plans. "We should start with the southern property," Xavier said, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder. "Get that operation running smoothly, then incorporate your father's ranch. It will take time, but we can build something good." "We will need a house," Lily said. "Somewhere that is ours, not connected to painful memories." "We could build one, halfway between the two properties, somewhere with a good view." "I want a big kitchen," Lily said dreamily, "like my mother had, with windows that let in light and a table big enough for family gatherings." "Family gatherings," Xavier repeated softly. "You want children?" "Someday, not right away. I want time with just you first, time to build our ranch and our life together. But yes, someday I want children. Do you?" "I do. I want everything with you, Lily. The ranch, the house, the children, the life, all of it." They moved to the southern property in early March, once the worst of the winter had passed. The land was beautiful, rolling hills covered in pale grass, with the Rio Grande glinting silver in the distance and the mountains rising purple on the horizon. There was an old adobe house on the property, small but sturdy, and they spent weeks making it comfortable while Xavier surveyed the land and planned where to build their permanent home. They hired workers from nearby villages, good men who needed employment and knew ranching. Xavier proved to be an excellent manager, fair but firm, and the men respected him. Lily threw herself into learning every aspect of the operation, spending long days in the saddle checking fences and water sources, her strength returning more each week. By summer, they had cattle grazing on the southern property and plans drawn up for their new house. Xavier hired a crew, and construction began in July. They designed it together, a sprawling single-story ranch house built of adobe and wood, with that big kitchen Lily wanted, a parlor with a massive stone fireplace, and windows that framed the mountain views. There were 4 bedrooms, because Xavier said he hoped to fill them eventually, which made Lily blush and laugh. In August, the trial against Lucinda Nichols concluded. She was found guilty on all charges and sentenced to 15 years in prison. Lily attended the sentencing, sitting in the courtroom with Xavier's hand in hers, and when it was over, she felt a chapter of her life close. Justice had been served. She could move forward now without looking back. Their house was completed in October, and they moved in on a crisp autumn day with golden leaves swirling in the wind. Martha and Doc Harrison came to visit, pronouncing it the finest house in New Mexico, and Mrs. Chen sent a set of beautiful silk curtains all the way from Santa Fe. They hosted a party for their workers and their families, filling the new house with laughter and music. And Lily stood in her big kitchen, watching Xavier dance with one of the workers' daughters, and thought about how completely her life had transformed. That winter was nothing like the previous one. Lily spent it warm and safe in Xavier's arms in their beautiful house, surrounded by the life they were building together. They made love often with passion and tenderness, and on the cold nights when nightmares tried to surface, when Lily woke gasping from dreams of the attic, Xavier was there to hold her and remind her that she was safe, that he would never let anything hurt her again. In the spring, they expanded the operation, purchasing cattle and horses, hiring more workers. Xavier had given up surveying entirely, dedicating himself to the ranch, though he occasionally consulted for neighbors with boundary disputes. Word spread about his expertise and his fairness, and he became known throughout the territory as a man whose word could be trusted. Lily thrived in her role as a rancher. She had inherited her father's eye for cattle and her mother's head for business, and together with Xavier's practical knowledge and management skills, they built something successful and sustainable. The ranch became known as the Double N for Nichols and Navarro, honoring both sides of Lily's heritage. In the summer of 1885, Lily realized she was pregnant. She told Xavier on a warm evening in late June as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and red. He was quiet for a long moment, then pulled her into his arms so tightly she could barely breathe. "A baby," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Our baby. Are you happy?" "Lily, I'm more than happy. I'm overwhelmed. I'm terrified. I'm every emotion at once." He pulled back to look at her, cupping her face in his hands. "You are going to be an amazing mother. You are going to be an amazing father." Their son was born in late February of 1886, 2 years almost to the day after Xavier had broken down the attic door and carried Lily to freedom. They named him James, after Lily's father, with the middle name Xavier. He was a healthy baby with his mother's dark eyes and his father's strong features, and Xavier cried when Doc Harrison placed him in his arms for the first time. Lily watched her husband cradle their son, speaking softly to him in Spanish and English, and felt her heart expand with a love so fierce it almost hurt. This was her family. This was the life she had survived for, the future she had refused to let Lucinda steal from her. As little James grew, the ranch grew with him. They added a second house for their foreman and his family, built new barns and corrals, expanded their herd. Xavier taught Lily surveying in the evenings, and she proved to have a natural aptitude for it. They became true partners in every sense, each complementing the other's strengths, each supporting the other through challenges. When James was 2, Lily became pregnant again, and their daughter arrived in the spring of 1889, a tiny thing with her father's gray eyes and her mother's dark hair. They named her Elena, after Lily's mother, and Xavier was just as smitten with his daughter as he had been with his son. The children grew up on the ranch, learning to ride almost before they could walk, running wild across the land with the workers' children as playmates. James was serious and thoughtful like his father, while Elena was fierce and adventurous, always getting into trouble. Xavier doted on both of them, and Lily often found him in the evenings reading to them or telling stories. The children snuggled against his sides. In 1892, they expanded their operation to officially include the Los Alamos property. The house there had been sold years ago, but the ranch land was valuable, and with a good foreman managing it, it became a profitable addition to their holdings. The Double N was now one of the most successful ranches in New Mexico, known for quality cattle and fair business practices. Life was not without challenges. There were hard years when drought threatened the herds, and years when cattle prices dropped and money was tight. There were injuries and illnesses, losses and setbacks. But through it all, Lily and Xavier faced everything together, their love deepening with each passing year, each shared struggle, each triumph. They celebrated their 10th anniversary in March of 1894, and Xavier gave Lily a beautiful necklace made of turquoise and silver, stones from her mother's land set in metalwork Xavier had commissioned from a skilled craftsman in Santa Fe. Lily gave him a new saddle, custom-made with his initials tooled into the leather, and a leather-bound journal filled with her drawings of their life together, sketches of the ranch, the children, moments she wanted to preserve forever. 10 years, Xavier said that night as they lay in bed, the children asleep down the hall. Sometimes it feels like yesterday that I broke down that attic door. Other times I can barely remember what my life was like before you. I do not want to remember before, Lily said. I only want to remember after. This life we have built. Do you ever think about what would have happened if I had not gone to survey that boundary line? If I had chosen a different day, or if I had ignored the sounds from the attic? I try not to. It is too painful. She turned in his arms to face him, but I believe we would have found each other somehow. Maybe not that day, but eventually. I think we were meant to find each other. Xavier kissed her forehead. I think so too. Their third child, a son they named Thomas, was born in 1895, followed by another daughter, Catherine, in 1898. The house that had once seemed so spacious was now filled with the cheerful chaos of 4 children, and Lily loved every noisy, exhausting moment of it. Xavier was an involved father, taking the children on rides across the ranch, teaching them about land management and cattle and the importance of honest work. As the century drew to a close, the Double N was firmly established as one of the premier ranches in New Mexico Territory. James, now 13, was already showing signs of being a natural rancher like his parents, while 10-year-old Elena declared she wanted to be a surveyor like her father. Thomas, at 4, wanted to be a cowboy, and baby Catherine was content to follow her siblings wherever they went. One evening in late 1899, as the new century approached, Lily and Xavier sat on their porch watching their children play in the yard. James was teaching Elena to use the surveying equipment, while Thomas chased Catherine around, both of them shrieking with laughter. We did it, Lily said softly. We built something good. We built something incredible, Xavier corrected. He took her hand, lacing their fingers together the way he had that first day in Doc Harrison's office. You know what I think about sometimes? What? That day in the attic, how close I came to walking away. I'd finished most of the survey. I was frustrated with your stepmother's lies and evasions. I was ready to submit my report and move on. But something made me go back one more time, made me insist on confirming those property markers. I think about how different everything would be if I had not listened to that instinct. I think about it too, Lily admitted. I think about all the small choices and chances that led to you being there at exactly the right moment. And I am grateful for every single one of them. Xavier raised her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles. I love you, Lily Irving. I have loved you since the moment I saw you in that attic, and I will love you until the day I die. I love you too, she said, tears pricking her eyes. You gave me my life back. You gave me everything. You did that yourself. I just opened the door. You are the one who survived, who fought, who built this life. Never forget that. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over their land, their children's laughter carrying on the evening breeze. Lily thought about that frightened girl in the attic, cold and alone and afraid, and she wished she could reach back through time and tell her to hold on, that rescue was coming, that life was coming, that love beyond imagining was waiting just on the other side of that locked door. As the last light faded from the sky and Martha Harrison's voice called the children inside for supper, Xavier stood and pulled Lily to her feet. Come on, Mrs. Irving, let us go feed our family. She went with him, hand in hand, into their warm, light-filled home, surrounded by the children they had made and the life they had built from ashes and winter darkness. She had survived the cold and the cruelty, had been carried down from that attic into the arms of a man who would love her forever, and everything that came after was more beautiful than she had ever dared to dream. The years continued to pass with the steady rhythm of ranch life. James turned 18 in 1903 and took over management of the Los Alamos section of the ranch, proving himself capable and level-headed. He married a local girl named Sarah, a rancher's daughter who was as comfortable on horseback as he was, and they built a house on the northern property. Elena, true to her word, studied surveying with her father and became skilled enough to assist with land disputes throughout the territory. She was fierce and independent, with her mother's determination and her father's practical intelligence. At 20, she was one of the few female surveyors in New Mexico, and she was proud of it. Thomas and Catherine were still young, but both showed promise in different directions. Thomas loved working with the horses, training them with patience and intuition, while Catherine had a gift for numbers and helped her mother with the ranch accounts. Xavier's hair had gone almost completely gray by his 53rd year, but he was still strong and active, still up before dawn to check on the cattle, still the steady presence at the center of their family. Lily, now 38, had a few threads of silver in her own dark hair and laugh lines around her eyes from years of happiness. They had built more than a ranch together. They had built a legacy. The Double N employed dozens of families, supported the local community, and was known throughout New Mexico for its integrity and success. Xavier and Lily had earned the respect of their neighbors and workers through years of fair dealing and hard work. In the spring of 1905, they received word that Lucinda Nichols had died in prison. Lily felt nothing but a distant sadness for the wasted life, the twisted bitterness that had led to such destruction. She had long since forgiven Lucinda, not for Lucinda's sake, but for her own, refusing to let hatred poison the beautiful life she had built. "How do you feel?" Xavier asked that evening as they prepared for bed. "Free," Lily said after a moment's thought. "Completely free. That last thread connecting me to that time is cut now. It is finally, truly over." Xavier pulled her into his arms, holding her close. "It has been over for 21 years, love. You have been free since the moment you walked out of that attic." "I know, but this feels like the final page turning, the absolute end of that chapter." They celebrated their 22nd anniversary that month, and Xavier arranged for a rare trip away from the ranch, just the two of them. They traveled to Santa Fe and stayed at Mrs. Chen's boarding house, which had expanded into a proper hotel over the years. Mrs. Chen, now elderly but still sharp-eyed and energetic, treated them like royalty. They spent a week exploring the city, visiting art galleries and shops, eating at restaurants and attending a theater performance. It was a luxury they rarely allowed themselves, and they treasured the time alone together, reconnecting as husband and wife outside their roles as parents and ranchers. On their last evening before returning home, they walked through the plaza as the sun set, hand in hand like young lovers. Xavier pulled her to a stop beneath an old cottonwood tree. "Do you remember what you said to me that night at this very boarding house 22 years ago, when you told me you loved me?" "I remember every word," Lily said. "You said it was terrifying and wonderful. Is it still terrifying?" "No," she said, smiling up at him. "Now it is just wonderful, just perfect, just everything." Xavier kissed her there beneath the cottonwood tree, and Lily felt the same flutter in her chest that she had felt the first time, that spark of love that had never dimmed, that had only grown stronger and deeper with time. They returned to the ranch to find that Elena had managed everything perfectly in their absence. The children were all healthy and happy, and a new colt had been born in the stables. Life continued its steady, beautiful rhythm. Over the following years, they welcomed grandchildren into the family. James and Sarah had 3 children, including twin girls who delighted everyone with their matching mischief. The ranch house that had once seemed too big was now filled regularly with family dinners and holiday gatherings, voices and laughter echoing through the rooms. Elena eventually married a fellow surveyor she met while working on a territorial boundary dispute. His name was Robert Chen, Mrs. Chen's grandson, and the connection pleased everyone. They settled near Santa Fe but visited often, and Elena continued her surveying work with her father's blessing and pride. Thomas took over the horse training operation, expanding it until the Double N was known across the territory for producing quality horses. He married later than his siblings, at 28, to a quiet woman named Anne, who shared his love of horses. Catherine, the baby of the family, surprised everyone by going to teachers' college and returning to open a school on the ranch for the workers' children and local families. She married one of her fellow teachers, and they built a house near the schoolhouse, creating an educational center that served the entire region. Xavier and Lily watched their children build their own lives and families with pride and satisfaction. They had given them strong foundations, taught them the value of hard work and integrity, and set them free to find their own paths. Each child had flourished in their own way, and the Double N had become more than a ranch. It was a community, a legacy, a testament to what could be built from love and determination. In the summer of 1915, Xavier and Lily celebrated their 32nd anniversary, surrounded by their children, grandchildren, and extended ranch family. A party was thrown in their honor with music and dancing and a feast that lasted late into the night. Xavier danced with Lily beneath strings of lanterns, moving slowly across the ground where they had built their life together. 32 years, Lily said, resting her head against his chest. Who would have thought that girl in the attic would end up here? I would have, Xavier said firmly. From the moment I saw your strength, your courage, I knew you were destined for remarkable things. We did remarkable things together, she corrected. Together, he agreed. Always together. As they danced, surrounded by the family they had created and the community they had built, Lily thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment. She thought about the darkness and the cold, about the locked door and the desperation, about the sound of splintering wood and the sight of Xavier standing in the doorway like salvation itself. She thought about how he had carried her down from that attic, how his arms had been the first place she felt truly safe in months. She thought about falling in love in Doc Harrison's examining room, about their wedding, about the ranch they had built from nothing, about each child they had brought into the world. Every moment, every choice, every challenge and triumph had led to this, to a life so full and rich and beautiful that sometimes it took her breath away, to love that had lasted through decades and only grown stronger, to a legacy that would outlive them both. The music played on, and Xavier held her close, and Lily closed her eyes and let herself feel the perfection of the moment. This was what she had survived for. This was what lay on the other side of suffering. This was the life that had been waiting for her, that Xavier had helped her claim when he broke down that door and carried her into the light. And it was more, so much more, than she had ever dreamed possible. Years later, when Lily was an old woman with silver hair and Xavier walked with a slight limp from an old riding injury, they would still sit on their porch in the evenings, watching the sun set over the land they loved. Their children were grown with children and grandchildren of their own. The ranch was thriving under James's management, and they had lived to see the territory of New Mexico become a state in 1912. On one such evening in 1920, as they celebrated 37 years of marriage, Xavier took Lily's hand and squeezed it gently. "No regrets?" he asked, a question he had asked her many times over the years. "Not a single one," she answered, as she always did. "You?" "Only that I did not find you sooner, that you suffered for even one moment before I could get to you." Lily turned to look at her husband, this man who had saved her, who had loved her, who had built a beautiful life with her. His face was lined with age now, his hands gnarled from decades of hard work, but his gray eyes were still sharp and full of love when they looked at her. "You found me exactly when you were meant to," she said softly. "Everything happened exactly as it should have. And look at what we made from it, Xavier. Look at this beautiful, perfect life." He raised her hand to his lips and kissed it, just as he had done 1,000 times before. "I love you, Lily Irving. More today than yesterday, less than tomorrow." "I love you too," she said. "My rescuer, my partner, my love." They sat together as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky. Two people who had found each other against impossible odds, who had built something lasting from tragedy and triumph, who had proven that love could heal even the deepest wounds and create miracles from despair. The attic was a distant memory now, faded like an old photograph, but Lily never forgot it entirely. She never forgot the cold or the darkness or the sound of her own heartbeat in the silence. She never forgot because it was part of her story, part of what had made her strong, part of what had led her to Xavier. But more importantly, she never forgot the sound of splintering wood, the flood of light, the sight of Xavier standing in the doorway. She never forgot the feeling of his arms around her, carrying her down, carrying her away from darkness into light. She never forgot the moment her life truly began, when a cowboy broke down a locked door and saved not just her life, but her future. That was the story she held closest to her heart, not the suffering, but the salvation. Not the locked attic, but the strong arms that carried her down. Not the winter that tried to kill her, but the love that gave her every reason to live. And as the years passed and their story became legend, passed down through their children and grandchildren, that was the part that people remembered most. Not the cruelty of a stepmother or the suffering of a cold attic, but the love story that blossomed from tragedy. The cowboy who heard a cry for help and answered it. The woman who survived against all odds. The life they built together that became a legacy of hope and proof that even the darkest winters eventually give way to spring. Xavier passed peacefully in his sleep in the autumn of 1924 at the age of 74, with Lily holding his hand. He had lived a full, rich life and died, surrounded by the family he loved, in the house he had built, on the land he had made prosperous. His funeral was attended by hundreds, a testament to the respect and affection he had earned throughout his life. Lily mourned him deeply, but found comfort in their children and grandchildren, in the memories of 39 years of love, in the knowledge that their story would continue through the family they had created. She lived another 6 years, remaining active and engaged with the ranch until the end. On a spring morning in 1930, Lily passed away in her sleep, a smile on her face, at the age of 65. The family said later that her last words, spoken to Elena the evening before, were about Xavier and the day he had rescued her from the attic. "He carried me down," she had said, her old eyes bright with memory. "He carried me down, and I have been flying ever since." They buried her next to Xavier on a hillside overlooking the ranch, under the vast New Mexico sky, in the land she had loved and the life she had built. The headstone read simply, Xavier Irving, 1850–1924, and Lily Navarro Irving, 1865–1930, together always. The Double N Ranch continued to thrive under their children's management, passing through generations, each one adding to the legacy of hard work, integrity, and love that Xavier and Lily had established. The story of how they met, of the locked attic and the cowboy who broke down the door, became family legend, told and retold to each new generation as a reminder that love can triumph over cruelty, that courage can overcome despair, and that sometimes salvation comes in the form of a stranger who refuses to walk away from a cry for help. And in Los Alamos, New Mexico, in the mountains and valleys where they had lived and loved and built their life together, people still spoke of Lily and Xavier Irving with respect and admiration, remembering them not for the tragedy that brought them together, but for the beautiful, enduring love story that followed. A love story that began when a cowboy heard a cry for help, broke down a locked door, and carried a suffering girl down from an attic into the light of a future neither of them could have imagined. A future they built together, one day at a time, for the rest of their lives.